Welcome to the video tutorial for Rowboat, the game of mind-bending strategy and mind-boggling suspense. You're probably here because you didn't feel like reading our instruction doc. That's fine, most people are visual learners, and in the next few minutes we're going to teach you how to play the greatest card game in the world. We're going to teach you how to play Rowboat for 2 players. If you want to learn 3 or 4 person Rowboat, follow along with the video tutorial and then consult the rulebook for any minor differences. To begin, each player will place face up in front of them one of each of the 3 specialty cards. The anchor is the weakest card, followed by the 2 through the 9, and as you move through the alphabet, the cards become stronger. Dolphin, mermaid, seeker, and whale. At the beginning of each hand, the dealer will deal cards face up until all 4 suits are showing, or until 12 cards are revealed, whichever happens first. As you can see, in this tide, the first suit out was maps, then came waves, then shells, and then I continued dealing until the 4th suit, oars, came out. So now we deal each player the same number of cards that are in the tide, in this case, 8. The tide's like a map of the hand. There are 8 cards in the tide, therefore each player received 8 cards, and this hand will contain 8 rounds of play. The first card revealed in the tide was the 3 of maps. So the 3 of maps is the ruling card for the first round of play. After that you move to the 7 of waves. The second round of play is ruled by the 7 of waves. The third round will be ruled by the mermaid of shells. You continue in this manner until all cards from your hand have been played, ending on the 8 of oars. How to play. At the beginning of the first round, the non-dealer always goes first. Now the tide determines which cards in your hands are playable. Since the first card revealed in the tide was the 3 of maps, each player must play a map if they have one. The non-dealer plays first and plays the whale of maps. The dealer follows with 2 of maps. The whale is the more powerful card, so the non-dealer wins the round, takes the card, and place them face down in front of him. Let's look back at the first round. Each player played a map because maps were called for in the tide. The first card in the tide was a 3 of maps. This is known as the trump suit. Each round will have a different trump suit. Okay? The trump suit is the most powerful suit, more powerful than all other 3 suits. Both players played trump, and the whale was more powerful than the 2, and that determined the winner. Now we move to the second round of play. The second card in the tide was a 7 of waves, so waves is the trump suit. So each player must play a wave if they have one. Since the non-dealer won the first round, they lead for the second round. Let's look at their hand. The non-dealer does not have a wave, therefore they can play any card they'd like. The non-dealer decides to play the 6 of oars. The dealer then follows with the 2 of waves. Now the dealer followed suit and played waves. You would think a 6 beats a 2, but in this case, because the dealer played trump, the dealer wins with a 2. Moving to the third round of play, the dealer leads because the dealer won the last round. He plays the whale of shells, the most powerful trump card. Can anything beat that? Yes. Let's talk about knobs. The non-dealer plays the knob. The knob carries the same value and same color as the ruling card in the tide, but it belongs to a different suit. Now knobs are the strongest trump card. They're even stronger than the whale of trump. A player may throw a knob even when they have other trump cards in their hand. Moving on to the next round, the non-dealer leads and plays the 9 of shells because shells were called for in the tide. Let's look at the dealer's hand. The dealer only has 1 shell left. It's the 5 of shells. But if you look at the tide, the 5 of shells is the knob for a card later in the tide. If he chooses, he may save this 5 of shells to be played as a knob later in the hand. This is the only time where a player is not required to follow suit. A card that is the same value as the ruling card in the tide, but a different color, is called an off-colored knob. Off-colored knobs beat all other non-trump cards. Off-colored knobs lose to trump and knobs. Off-colored knobs are not trump cards, so if you have a trump card in your hand, you're not allowed to play an off-colored knob. Earlier in the hand, the dealer chose not to follow suit when his only shell remaining was a knob for later in the hand. By doing so, he became married to the knob. Now normally, you can play your knob or choose not to play your knob, but when you choose not to follow suit, you become married to the knob. The dealer must play the 5 of shells here on the 5 of maps, and the non-dealer follows with the anchor of shells. The 5 wins. On the 7th round of play, both players played a dolphin, but neither were trump. This is a tie. In the case of a tie, neither player wins the round. Whoever wins the following round wins both rounds. When a tie occurs on the last round of the hand, nobody wins the round. There are 3 specialty cards in the deck: the rowboat, the lighthouse, and the moon. Players may only use each specialty card once during the course of the entire game. The rowboat beats every other card in the game, including the knob. You cannot play the rowboat on the last round of any hand. The lighthouse can be played at any time. When you play the lighthouse, you can look at your opponent's hand for the length of a sand timer. The moon can only be played by the dealer. When the dealer plays the moon, he declares how many cards will be in the tide before revealing the tide. If I were to play the moon and say 5, I would deal 5 cards to the tide. The tide ends here even though no shells have appeared in the tide. Let's say that the 3 of maps is the ruling card in the tide. The rowboat would beat everything, including the knob. The knob would beat any trump. Trump beats any off-colored knob, and the off-colored knob would beat any non-trump. Players receive 10 points for every round they win. The dealer won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds and receives 50 points. The non-dealer took 3 rounds and receives 30 points. The first player to reach 200 points wins. Bidding is optional for beginners. Once the players have received their cards, each player will bid on their hand, predicting how many rounds they intend to win. For more specifics on bidding, please consult the rulebook. In regular scoring, players receive 10 times their bid for a successful bid. A bid of 5 receives 50 points, a bid of 3, 30. In the next hand, Mrs. Bumples bid 4 but won 5 rounds. She receives 40 points and 1 extra bag for a total of 90 and 1. Gumbo bid 3 but only won 2. He loses 30 points, or 10 times his bid of 3. He now has a score of 0. Let's take another look at what we call getting set. In the next hand, Gumbo bids 4 and again only made 2. He still loses 40 points. It doesn't matter if you're 1 short or 2 short. If you don't make your bid, you lose 10 times your bid. Now let's take a closer look at bags. When a player wins more rounds than they intended to, they receive bags. And if at any point in the game they accumulate 5 bags, they lose 100 points. In this hand, Mrs. Bumples bid 3 but won 5 rounds, so she receives 2 bags, bringing her bag total to 3. Then she bid 4 but won 5. Now she has her 4th bag. Again, she bids 4, makes 5, so she receives her 5th bag. Even though the game is to 200 points, you can't win the game when you have 5 bags. So she loses 100 points and her bags are reset to 0. Winning the game. The first player to reach 200 points with less than 5 bags wins the game. Now you know how to play rowboat. Go have some fun.